The power died with a hard click. The lights in my ranch house blinked twice, then went completely black. I didn't panic, not yet, but when the emergency ICU monitor attached to my father's hospital bed started beeping like a panicked heart, I knew something was terribly wrong. I rushed into the back room where he lay, hooked up to portable medical equipment, his breathing shallow and mechanical, his pulse flickering on the now dark screen. "No, no, no," I muttered, yanking open drawers for backup. Batteries I knew were there. I shoved one into the side of the monitor, nothing dead. I checked the oxygen concentrator next. It was blinking red. We had maybe 5 minutes before things got critical. Then I heard a voice outside. "Maybe next time he'll..." Listen when I say the HOA rules apply to everyone. It was her, Karen, the president of our self-declared HOA, standing at the edge of my property with a smug little smile, arms folded like she had just solved world hunger by shutting off my power. My stomach turned. She had actually done it. This woman, this bitter, nosy tyrant, had called the power company and claimed I was in violation of a code that didn't even exist, demanding they cut my supply, and somehow they listened. My father, an 82-year-old retired firefighter, had been recovering from a massive stroke. Just 2 months ago, we'd converted one of our back rooms into a mini ICU with the doctor's permission. I was managing his post-discharge care from the ranch with oxygen-feeding pumps, a suction machine and vitals monitor, and now she jeopardized all of it on purpose. I didn't think I just ran straight to the garage, and 5 minutes later, the rumble of diesel echoed across the entire valley as I parked a 40-ton generator truck. Right at the edge of my barn. Oh yes, I was ready. You should have seen Karen's face when she turned to look and saw me climb out of that massive beast of a machine. I didn't even glance her way. I sprinted back inside to reconnect the ICU gear, and just as I yanked the cords into the industrial power port and hit the start switch, the entire house came alive like it had been reborn, lights on screens blinking, oxygen flowing. My father inhaled deep, long alive, but Karen was still outside, screaming something, and that's when I heard it, sirens getting closer. Now let me take you back to how this all began. My name is Ryan Carter. I'm a 39-year-old paramedic turned rancher who left the city life after a near burnout in the emergency response world. I moved to a quiet valley in Northern California 2 years ago with my dad, Joe Carter, who had already begun struggling with memory lapses and needed more care than my city job allowed me to provide. We settled in a beautiful piece of land, 20 acres of wild grass, oak trees, and gentle hills. I paid cash for it. My name is on the deed. It's outside the HOA map, or so I thought. Now meet Karen Dawson, late 50s, sharp cheekbones, expensive joggers, the kind of woman who carries a clipboard with laminated pages like they're government laws. She lives down the hill in a tight subdivision where every mailbox looks the same, and everyone whispers behind curtain blinds. Karen wasn't born in that role. She became it after her 3rd divorce. She moved to Serenity Hill Estates and decided she was going to restore order and discipline to the neighborhood. The problem was Serenity Hills. Actual HOA stopped at the gate well before my ranch even started. Didn't matter to Karen. She declared herself the voice of the valley. And when she saw my place, a ranch house with solar panels, goats, a small greenhouse, and a big American flag on the front gate, she decided I was the threat to her peace. It started with letters printed, bold font, "Your fencing. Height violates the Serenity aesthetic code." Then came the inspections. She brought out someone she called a HOA officer who turned out to be her cousin in a reflective vest. Then the cameras, she mounted a trail cam at the edge of her property that just so happened to point into my windows. But the last straw came after my father returned from the hospital. I installed the ICU gear because I wanted him to heal at home, surrounded by peace, not fluorescent lights, and strangers. I even hired a visiting nurse twice a week. Everything was within legal code. I had permits, backup, power medical release documents. But Karen didn't like the look of it. She said it lowered property values. She said ranch equipment made the area look industrial. She said oxygen tanks were a hazard. I tried to be kind at first, I really did. I even invited her over for lemonade once, hoping to explain that my father was a veteran and firefighter and all we wanted was to be left alone. She declined, then came. That day, I'd gone into town for groceries and left my phone charging at home when I came back and saw the blinking ICU alert from the front window. I already had a bad feeling. And when I heard her laughing, that's how we got to the moment where I parked the generator truck and now sirens blazing coming down the hill. I rushed outside, wiping my hands on my jeans, and sure enough, 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up just as Karen waved them down like she was hosting a parade. There, she yelled. He brought illegal industrial equipment into a residential area. It's a nuisance, probably leaking gas all over the grass. The deputy glanced at the truck, then at me, then back at her. Ma'am, this isn't an industrial zone violation, he said gently. We received a medical emergency call from this location. That truck is a generator, not a weapon. Karen's face twisted. But he doesn't have permission. He's not part of the HOA. He can't just run a hospital in his backyard. I stepped forward. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I held out the medical document signed by the state board and hospital certifying my father's condition and our at-home treatment plan. It was laminated in a folder, notarized, and dated. The deputy took it, flipped. Through nodded. He's in full compliance, he said. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She pointed a shaky finger at my house. I want that thing removed, she said, her voice rising. It's dangerous. I'm going to call the neighborhood board again. I'll sue. And just then, my father's voice echoed from the window, weak but clear. Karen, is that you screaming again? She froze, and I swear if looks could kill, she would have tried, but she turned and walked away. You'd think it ended there, right wrong, the very next morning. I found something strange, a letter folded and taped to my mailbox, no name, no signature, but the message, it sent a chill through my chest. You're being watched, that truck won't save you forever. And just like that, this war had only begun. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments, and remember, always choose kindness, but never confuse kindness with weakness. I didn't sleep that night, not with that message sitting in my kitchen drawer. Its cold words whispering in my head every time I closed my eyes. You're being watched. That truck won't save you forever. I paced the hallway outside my father's room, listening to the quiet hum of the generator and the steady beep of the vitals monitor. My father was sleeping peacefully, unaware that the valley outside had turned into a battlefield. That generator truck. I hadn't even told you how I got it, had. I see, before I left my paramedic job, I used to run logistics during wildfires. One of my best friends, Dave Mitchell now, owns a private emergency power company, and when my dad had his stroke, Dave gave me a standing offer. If anything ever goes south, I've got you. So when Karen cut the power, I made just one call, and 5 minutes later, Dave had dispatched his biggest rig from just one town over. That's how I had a 40-ton generator truck sitting at my ranch less than an hour after the power went out. No red tape, no city approval, just one favor
between friends, but now that letter changed things and I knew it.
Wasn't over the next morning, I sat on the front porch with a hot mug of black coffee waiting for the sun to rise and thinking about my next move. The air smelled like dew and diesel, and every creak of the windmill made me more aware of just how alone my ranch was. That's when she showed up again. Karen, this time in a bright red blouse and oversized sunglasses, walking up my gravel path like she owned it. She didn't even knock, just planted herself in front of the porch and crossed her arms. "I want that truck off this land," she said flatly. "You don't own this land," I replied, not even looking at her. "You don't even own a right to be here." Her mouth twitched. "The HOA has regulations. I'm not part of the HOA. Well, maybe we need to change that." That was it. I stood up slowly, setting my coffee down, and stared her straight in the face. "Karen, my father almost died yesterday because of what you did. I don't care about your fake bylaws or your made-up regulations. You're not going to bully me."
"Off my land, I will have you cited for code violations. I've already called the county." They laughed, her face turned pink. "I have influence." I stepped forward and lowered my voice. "If you so much as step onto my property again without my consent, I'll
"File a restraining order so fast your clipboard will catch fire this."
"Isn't your playground?" She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped when she noticed my security camera blinking red right over the porch. Then she turned on her heel and stormed off. I watched her go, but something didn't sit right. Karen didn't get.
Quiet, not without a plan, and I was right to be suspicious because that night I checked the footage from my driveway camera and saw something I never expected. Two men wearing hoodies around 2A. They walked up the edge of my fence line with flashlights, paused near the generator truck, and started circling it. They didn't touch it, but they looked hard, like they were inspecting it, measuring, counting, whispering. I couldn't hear their voices, but one of them took out a phone and snapped pictures. Then they left the way they came. I didn't sleep a wink by morning. I had a full set of printed screenshots, and I sent them straight to Deputy Mendes, the same sheriff who had responded the day Karen cut the power. He showed up an hour later in his cruiser, chewing on sunflower seeds and frowning as he flipped through the prints. "You recognize either of these guys?" he asked. "No." "And they weren't from the power company you think Karen sent them?" I shrugged. "You tell me they weren't here for lemonade." He let out a sigh and rubbed the back of his neck legally. "If they didn't cross the fence, there's not much I can do, but I'll file a suspicious activity report. If they come back, you call us immediately. Got it, got it." He paused on the last photo, the one where the taller man pointed at the gas intake valve on the generator. "That," he said slowly, "is someone who's thinking about sabotage." And just like that, the air turned heavier when he left. I reinforced the gate, added motion lights near the barn, and installed 2 more trail cameras. I even taught my border collie Max to alert me if he saw unfamiliar movement near the driveway. I had no doubt in my mind now this wasn't just a Karen problem anymore. It was a target. But then, just as I started to feel prepared, it happened again around 400p.
That same day, the generator truck suddenly died. All power in the house shut off for the second time in 48 hours. I ran outside in a panic, heart pounding, expecting to find someone tampering with it, but the truck was untouched, no leaks, no damage.
Just off, I popped the panel and saw it. The fuel line had been cleanly cut, sabotaged, and while I stood there, stunned, trying to figure out what to do next, I heard a familiar, sharp voice from down the hill. "Guess the HOA wins again, Karen." She was leaning on her back porch, sipping iced tea like she was watching a fireworks show. I grabbed my phone and called Dave. "You need to send the backup," I said, through gritted teeth. "Already on the way," he replied. "And Ryan, this time, it's armored generator." "Oh yeah," he chuckled. We call it the Fort Knox unit, and it's not just coming with power, it's coming with surveillance too. And just as I lowered my phone, I heard the sound of a drone buzzing above my ranch, hovering, watching. Karen had escalated, and I was going to respond in a way she never expected. The drone hovered like a vulture. I could see it just above the treine. A shiny black bug with a blinking blue light. It tilted and spun slowly, watching everything. My house, my barn, the still silent generator truck, and probably me. I raised my phone and snapped a photo, then another. Then I waved at it. It zipped higher, then drifted away toward the same direction. Karen's house sat just out of sight, but never out of mind.
I wasn't paranoid, I was prepared. 30 minutes later, I heard the roar, deep, thunderous ground shaking. It wasn't a tractor, it wasn't a delivery truck, it was the Fort Knox unit, a reinforced military generator truck with bulletproof shielding, 24 hours.
Built-in surveillance and 2 mounted spotlights that could blind a man at 50 yards. It looked like a monster out of a sci-fi movie. Dave himself was behind the wheel. This time, he climbed down, wearing aviators and a dusty vest, chewing a toothpick, and grinning like he just showed up to a Wild West duel. "Where should I park it, Sheriff Ranch?" he asked. I pointed to the exact spot where the first truck had sat. He backed it in perfectly. This new truck had a steel mesh cage covering the fuel.
Lines, motion sensor alarms, and a real-time link to my phone. Karen could bring drones. Cousins or the Queen of England, she wasn't getting through this one. As Dave connected the lines, the house lit back up again. Power humming steady and bright, Dads.
Oxygen machine hissed back to life. The monitors blinked back on. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for the past hour. But just as things calmed down, I saw Max, my border collie, bolt toward the fence line, barking wildly. Something was out there. I ran to the gate and saw it. Another letter pinned to my wooden fence with a kitchen knife. This time it read, "Your power is on for now, but this isn't over. Obey the HOA or we escalate." Escalate? Was cutting the fuel line not already escalation? I took photos of the note and knife and called Deputy Mendes again. He arrived in 20 minutes lights, flashing clipboard in hand. As he examined the knife, I could see concern growing
on his face. "This isn't a prank anymore, Ryan," he said. "This is a threat. You've got security cams, right?" "Yes," I said. "But whoever did this stayed just outside the range."
"Well," he said grimly, "I'm going to file this as an attempted criminal intimidation, but off the record, someone's watching you and they're not going to stop because of a warning that night I couldn't sleep again, so I sat on the porch with my hunting rifle across my lap, not to use it, but just to send a message that I wasn't afraid." That's when a pickup truck rolled by, real slow, not a neighbor. I recognized it didn't stop. Just crept past my fence, headlights dimmed, then vanished into the night. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a security alert. The Fort Knox generator's fuel cage had been tampered with at 4:17 a.m. Not cut, but rattled, tugged by someone wearing gloves and a hoodie. I checked the footage, and there, clear as day, was someone I recognized, Karen's nephew, Brad Dawson, early 30s, always wore a camo hat. Karen had once introduced him to me as our HOA security chief. He looked straight into the truck's camera, grinned, and walked away. So that's how they were doing it. They were testing me, pushing the boundary 1 inch at a time. And now they knew I had proof. I sent the footage to Deputy Mendes, who called me back immediately. "We can bring him in for trespassing and attempted vandalism," he said, "but you need to be ready for the blowback. Karen's got connections." The moment her nephew's arrested, she'll go nuclear. I'm not scared of nuclear. I said I'm scared of my father not waking up. If that machine goes off again. That afternoon, the deputy came with a warrant and picked up Brad from Karen's house. I watched from my porch as she screamed, flailed her arms and cursed everyone within. 50 me, but the most chilling thing, she stopped yelling the moment she saw me watching, and she smiled, not kindly, not nervously, but like someone who already knew what she was going to do. Next, 3 hours later after sunset, I was walking back from the barn when I smelled something burning plastic. I sprinted to the back of the house hard in my throat, and that's when I saw it, smoke coming from my trash bins. Someone had set fire to the garbage near the fuel line supply shed. I ran for the hose, doused the flames before they could spread, and stomped out what was left of the scorched plastic bags. Thankfully, it hadn't reached the fuel shed, but that wasn't an accident, that was a message, and this time I knew exactly what I had to do. I dialed a number I never thought I'd call my cousin Adam, a cybersecurity contractor for the feds and a former Navy SEAL. "Hey," I said, as the line picked up, "I need a favor, and I think it's time we teach a lesson to a fake HOA that doesn't know who they're
messing with, because if Karen thought fire and fear could run me off my ranch, she had no idea what was coming next. Adam didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll be there by nightfall."
And he was that same night, just as the stars began to crawl out of the darkening sky. His matte black SUV pulled up my long gravel driveway max. My dog wagged his tail but didn't bark, like he somehow knew this was family. And not just any family. The kind of family you call when things are about to get serious. Adam Carter, 42 Calm Eyes crew, cut the kind of guy who could fix a broken circuit with one hand and break a man's wrist with the other. He got out wearing jeans, a long-sleeved shirt, and a backpack that looked heavy enough to sink a boat. "Looks quiet," he said, scanning the perimeter like muscle memory. "It always looks quiet," I replied. "That's how they hide." I showed him the footage. The drone, the knife in the fence, the sabotage, the trash fire, everything. He nodded slowly, then pulled out his laptop. "We're going to catch everyone within an hour." Adam had set up a portable surveillance network. Across my property, thermal sensors, night vision drones, hidden cameras inside fake rocks, and even a GPS tracker he secretly stuck under Karen's mailbox when we drove past. "This is no longer just you and a nosy neighbor," he said, as we walked the
fence line. "This is a coordinated harassment campaign. I'm treating it like an op." I finally felt like I could breathe for about a day until the armored generator truck went missing. Yes, missing. I woke up around 5 p.m. to silence. No hum, no blinking light. I ran
outside barefoot and stopped cold. The Fort Knox unit was gone. It wasn't stolen. No broken gate, no skid marks, just gone. I checked the tracker on my phone. It showed the truck had been moved at 3:47 a.m.
Adam was already awake, scanning satellite images on his laptop. Within 5 minutes, he found it parked half a mile down in the valley at the back of a construction site. "Who the hell moves a 40-ton generator truck without keys?" I asked, stunned. "Someone with a flatbed hauler and a lot of nerve."
We jumped into Adam's SUV and tore down the back roads when we got to the site. The truck was still there, abandoned but undamaged. The fuel cage had been unlocked with a key. A copy. Adam narrowed his eyes. "You said only Dave had the original keys." "Yeah, I never made copies. We have a breach." He examined the side panel, then pointed. There, scratched into the paint, were 4 letters. Hoke hand-carved. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. We got the truck started and brought it back up the hill under heavy fog. By the time we parked it, The sheriff had arrived, and so had the fire marshal. They didn't even ask if we thought it was Karen, they just said, "We'll investigate." But we both knew no help was coming any time soon. That night Adam gave me a new plan. We let them think they've won. He said, "We put out fake rumors that you're selling the ranch, we draw them in, then we catch them red-handed. You sure that'll work?" He grinned. "I've used it on arms dealers. I think we can handle Karen." So I did it. I posted a fake listing online, ranch for sale. Owner, tired of HOA harassment, will sell cheap. Within hours, the listing had 300 views. By morning, Karen was standing on her deck sipping lemonade with binoculars and a smug smile like she'd already claimed victory. Then things took a turn. I didn't expect at noon, a black sedan pulled into my driveway. A man in a suit got out, briefcase in hand, and asked for me by name. "I'm from Oak View Development Partners," he said. "I understand you're ready to sell." I froze. "Where did you hear that it's been circulating among HOA circles?" He replied, casually. "We were told the property might become available. Our firm is working closely with Serenity Hill HOA to expand the community. We'd like to make an offer."
Expand the community, that's when I realized this was never about the generator or my fence or even my dad's ICU gear. It was always about my land. They wanted it. And Karen was the puppet master. "I'm not selling," I said firmly. He raised an eyebrow.
"Are you sure it would be simpler for everyone?" I stepped closer, locked eyes with him, and said, "You can tell Karen and whoever signs your checks, this ranch isn't going anywhere, and neither am I." He left without a word. That night Adam called an emergency meeting, just me, him, and the wind rustling outside. I checked the HOA's charter. It ends 4 parcels before your fence, but if they can make you leave, they can legally annex your land. They want to turn it into more suburbs, I realized, McMansions, cookie-cutter homes. And Karen gets her legacy, her kingdom. But Adam had a plan I've traced. Their private drone, we can take control of it, fly it into her yard with the right message. You mean scare them? No, just record them. And so the next morning we did exactly that at 8:37 a.m. Karen walked outside in her silk robe, holding her coffee. And there it was, her drone hovering over her porch with a new flight path. Our message displayed on a screen. "We see everything, try again," and we dropped the evidence. She screamed, grabbed. A broom swung at it. Missed. It buzzed away before she could even blink twice. Then she turned her head and stared straight at my house. Her smile was gone, her eyes were burning, and that was the last time she tried to sabotage the generator. But her retaliation, it came from another angle. That same day I got a notice from the county building inspector. An anonymous report had been filed against me for unlicensed medical operation, hazardous waste, and unpermitted industrial equipment. If the complaint stood, they could shut down my father's treatment and fine me thousands of dollars. Karen hadn't given up. She had just changed the battlefield. And now I had to fight the county to save my father's life. The envelope was thick, stamped in red and left, wedged in my gate latch like a threat. It wasn't from the sheriff or the HOA. It was from the county code enforcement division, inside 3 pages of legal accusations. Words like unauthorized medical operation, violation of land use, permit, and hazardous waste. Storage jumped out like bullets. There was even a threat of a $10,000 per day fine unless I ceased operations and removed all unlicensed equipment. I stared at the paper in silence. Then I laughed. It wasn't a funny laugh. It was the kind of laugh you let out when you're so angry, so done, so bone-deep tired of being poked by snakes pretending to be neighbors. Karen wasn't using scissors anymore. She was using the system, and she was smart about it. She hadn't filed the complaint in her own name, but Adam's scan of the document metadata showed the form had been submitted online from an IP address registered to her nephew, Brad, the same guy who tried to sabotage the generator. It was war, and they were playing dirty that night. I sat beside my father's bed. He looked weaker. The stress, the interrupted care, it was taking a toll. I watched him sleep, his chest slowly rising and falling, the oxygen tube gently fluttering with each breath. "You just rest, Dad," I whispered. "I got this," and I did. The very next morning I drove to the county municipal office. Adam came with me, dressed like a federal agent, even though he technically wasn't anymore. We walked into the building like we owned the place inside. The inspection office, a man named Roger Tibet, mid-50s, glasses, coffee breath, looked up at us with confusion as I slammed the violation letter on his desk. "This is fabricated," I said. "The complaint is based on lies and harassment." Roger blinked. "Sir, I'm just the note. You're the one who signed it," I said, pointing to the bottom of the document. "And I have evidence that this complaint was submitted by someone impersonating a county resident." Adam slid a USB stick across the table. "Drone footage.
Video confessions, metadata, IP tracking, you'll want to see it." Roger plugged it in, and what he saw made his eyes go wide. Footage of Brad tampering with the generator. Karen screaming threats audio of her saying, "I'll make sure the county shuts him
down." Even her smug laughter as she bragged about how easy it was to make officials dance. Roger took a long breath. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I'll escalate this to the county attorney. This is very serious." "Good," I said, "because if my father dies, because
of a false shutdown order, you'll all be co-defendants." We left that office, and by the time we got back to the ranch, I had 3 missed calls from the county legal department by nightfall. The violations were dropped completely, but that didn't stop.
Karen not even closed that same week. Just 2 days later, I came home from a trip to town to restock medical supplies and found a bulldozer parked at the edge of my land, a bulldozer with Serenity Hill HOA spray painted on the side. There were no workers, no crew, just a machine, placed like a threat, facing my property line with its blade ready. I stormed down to the road, fuming. When a white SUV pulled up, Karen stepped out, red lips, big sunglasses, clipboard. As always, I'd move that truck, T. Said, "You're trespassing again. It's not on your land," she smiled yet. "But the board met this morning. We voted to proceed with development planning. Your ranch is on the list for future roadwork expansion. You can't do that." She tilted her head. "Ryan, you're still not understanding. You can fight us, but we'll just keep coming. We'll refile complaints. We'll block access, roads. We'll put in zoning requests. The moment your father is gone, we'll have you buried in paperwork." She took a step closer and lowered her voice. "Sell now, and you won't have to watch this place crumble around you." I clenched my fists. "You have no idea who you're messing with." "No, dear," she smirked. "You have no idea how powerful I am." I watched her drive away the bulldozer, still humming like a sleeping dragon behind her. That night, Adam sat with me on the porch. "They're getting bolder," he said. "They're trying to wait out Dad," I whispered. We were quiet for a moment, then Adam asked, "You remember Uncle Ray's ranch upstate?" I nodded. "Yes, but why?" He smiled. "He built a legal conservation trust around it, turned it into protected land. Nobody could touch it, not even developers." I sat up straighter. "Are you saying?" He nodded. "I already filed the paperwork in your name last month, just in case. We've been gathering drone data, camera records, witness logs, and today I filed
an emergency injunction under the Federal Private Property Preservation Act." stared at him. You did all that without telling me you've had enough on your plate. Then he pulled out a fresh folder. In 3 days, a federal officer will arrive to inspect.
The ranch, if approved, it will become a protected historical homestead site, immune to HOA claims, zoning expansions or forced buyouts. I blinked. You just saved the ranch. Adam smirked. No, he said, pointing at the house where Dad was resting. He did. You're just making sure it lasts. But then, just when I thought we had one around, we heard a loud bang outside. Bang! We ran to the barn, smoke windows shattered, and the generator truck set on fire. Not a huge blaze, but enough to destroy the control panel and leave scorch marks across the steel shell. The fire hadn't spread, but it had been intentional planted, and on the barn wall someone had spray painted the words, "No power, no peace, move out." I looked at Adam. He looked at me, and we both knew Karen's final move was coming. But what she didn't know, so was ours. The next morning, the ranch felt like a crime scene. Ash still floated in the air, where the metal frame of the generator truck sat blackened and twisted, and the spray-painted message, "No power, no peace, move out," still glared from the side of my barn like a declaration of war. But this wasn't just vandalism, this was arson, and it was federal. Now I stood over the wreckage. With a jaw so tight my teeth hurt, Adam was already on the phone with a contact from the Bureau of Land Management the moment he mentioned sabotage of federally pending property. The tone on the other end shifted. "We'll send someone by sundown," they said. Then we called Dave again. He didn't even let me finish before interrupting. "I'm already bringing the backup, the real backup, by 300p. Dave pulled in with a mobile microgrid unit, essentially a military command center that could power a small town. It came with solar panels, battery storage backup, diesel satellite surveillance, and its own fire suppression system. And this time, we installed it underground, hidden, shielded, untouchable. Karen would never see it coming. But that wasn't all. Adam had filed a restraining order, not just against Karen, but also Brad and every single HOA affiliate who had stepped foot on my land. In the last 30 days, then we sent copies to every neighbor within 3 ME warning them that the Carter Ranch was now a pending federal site. Anyone who trespassed would face not local fines, but federal prosecution. It worked for a few hours until that night 8/19. Amai was locking up the greenhouse when Max started growling. A deep, low sound I hadn't heard from him since the night the drone first appeared. I followed his gaze to the fence line there. Standing half in shadow, half in moonlight, was Karen. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't holding a clipboard. She was just standing there staring at my house. I approached, keeping my distance. "You're violating the restraining order," I said firmly. "I won't cross the fence," she replied, "but I wanted you to see my face when you lose. I'm not selling and I'm not moving." She tilted her head, "Not even after the fire." I took a step closer. "You started that fire." She didn't answer, just smiled, slow and bitter. "I told you, no power, no peace. You still don't get.
It do you this land, it's wasted on you. One day you'll wake up and it'll be gone." She turned and walked away. Max barked twice but didn't chase. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, Adam and I stayed in the barn's loft, watching the monitors tracking.
Every heat signature around the fence drones hovered overhead. Spotlights were mounted at the tree line. We were ready, and then boom, a real explosion shook the east side of the ranch. We raced out, weapons in hand. The fence near the irrigation line had been blown open, yes, blown, with what we later found out was a small amount of industrial-grade firework powder packed inside PVC. The explosion wasn't meant to hurt us. It was meant to cause chaos in the distance through the smoke, and kicked up dirt I saw silhouette. 4 of them dashing through the broken fence, hauling something heavy toward the barn, we shouted. Max barked. Adam fired a warning shot in the air. They dropped the equipment and bolted, but not before I caught one of their faces. Brad again. When the dust settled, we realized what they were trying to steal a sealed battery cabinet from the underground power system. It weighed over 300 lb. They didn't get far within an hour. Local police arrived, but this time they came with a federal marshal, thanks to Adam's earlier call. And when we showed them the camera footage, the faces, the explosion, the attempted theft, that was the tipping point. The marshal, a tall, calm woman named Agent Felton, looked at me and said, "You're not just dealing with HOA harassment, you're dealing with organized criminal sabotage." She marched straight down the hill with officers in tow and knocked on Karen's door. The whole ranch watched from a distance. Karen answered in a silk robe. 20 minutes later, she was in handcuffs. So was Brad. So were two others, HOA board members, caught trespassing and participating in what the federal marshal described as a coordinated attempt to illegally obtain protected property. Karen's screams echoed across the valley. "This isn't over. You can't do this to me. I built this place." But it was over for her the next morning. The bulldozer was gone, the drone gone, the HOA inspection letters gone. But something surprising happened too. Neighbors, I had never met people who had once stood silently by, started showing up at my gate. Some brought casseroles, others brought flowers. One man, a veteran named George, brought his own power generator, just in case. "I should have stood up to her years ago," he said, eyes full of regret. Karen had ruled through fear, but now the spell was broken. That afternoon, a black SUV returned. It was Agent Felton. She shook my hand and handed me a thick envelope. "Congratulations." She said the Carter Ranch has officially been approved for federal land protection. Effective immediately. No HOA developer or private party can purchase, claim, or annex it without your signature. I stared at the papers. Speechless. "This place is yours," she added, "forever." I looked at Adam. He gave me a small nod, proud and calm. Then I looked back at my house, at the barn, at the garden in the hills, and the porch where Dad used to sit, sipping lemonade we'd won, but not because we fought harder, because we never stopped. Standing, and for the first time in weeks, I slept. But just as the sun dipped below the hills that evening and the stars took their place above my ranch, I saw one last drone rise from the trees. It didn't hover. It didn't record it. Flew in a straight line away. 3 weeks passed. Peace settled over the Carter Ranch like morning mist, quiet, soft and long. Overdue, my dad was stable. The microgrid system ran smoothly underground. The federal protection plaque was nailed proudly next to the front door, and Karen was facing multiple charges, including criminal mischief, trespassing, attempted sabotage of medical equipment, and conspiracy to commit property fraud. Brad and the others were out on bail, but the HOA was shattered, their clubhouse
Shut down their meetings, cannelled their influence gone, or so I thought. It was a Saturday when I got the letter, plain envelope, no stamp, just folded and slid into the barn door latch inside a single sheet of paper. One line: "You may have won the ranch,
but you don't know what's buried under it." No name, no return address, just that cryptic sentence. Adam and I looked at each other. "What the hell does that mean?" I asked. "I don't know," he replied, "but I think we'd better find out." We began scanning. The next day, we brought in ground-penetrating radar from one of Adam's tech contacts. It wasn't paranoia, it was precaution. The letter rattled me more than I let on. Who would go this far just to hint at something? We scanned the north field. First, nothing. Then the garden, then the old goat pasture, still nothing. Then we scanned the area behind the barn near the stream bed. the part of the ranch I hadn't touched in years. And that's where the radar pinged something about 4FT down a metal box, buried. Intentionally, Adam and I looked at each other and started digging. We expected junk or some old farming equipment from decades past. What we pulled out, a sealed steel case rusted around the hinges, heavy about the size of a cooler. I pried it open. With a crowbar inside were documents, old ones, deeds, letters, maps. At first I didn't understand what I was seeing until Adam flipped open a folded page at the bottom, an original deed from 1894 signed by Joseph Carter, my great-great-grandfather, and attached to it was a handwritten note to my family. This land is more than soil, it is history. This ranch sits on the remains of our first settlement. If anyone tries to take it, remind them that this place belongs to the Carter bloodline, not the state, not the law, not strangers with shiny suits, but to us forever. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just land. It was legacy, and Karen almost wiped it away because of some bylaws and fake authority. I had to know more, so I took the documents to the local county archive. 3 hours later, I had confirmation my ranch was the original site of Carter's Crossing, a 19th century homestead recognized by state historical records but never officially marked due to lost documentation. Until now, I filed the papers. By the end of the week, the Carter Ranch was no longer just a protected site. It was a historical landmark that meant untouchable forever. And just like that, Karen's final hope, whatever long game she was playing, was dead. But that wasn't the only surprise waiting. One evening, Adam and I sat on the porch watching the sunset when a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Not feds, not cops. A young woman stepped out, late 20s, nervous. "Are you Ryan Carter?" "Yes, I believe I am." "Your cousin?" she said. "What?" I blinked. "My mum was your dad's half-sister. She passed away last year. I found these in her closet." She handed me a dusty envelope inside old photos of my father as a young man standing beside a little girl I'd never seen before. "A letter from him dated decades ago. My family never told me," she said. "But when I saw the story in the papers about the ranch and the fire, I just had to come. Dad had another sister, and she had a daughter, a living piece of the Carter legacy. I brought her inside, introduced her to Dad, and when he saw her, he smiled, a real one. Tears welled up in his eyes as he whispered, 'You look just like your mama.' The ranch wasn't just safe, it was whole again." The next weekend we held a gathering. Not just friends, but the neighbors, the ranch hands, the Sheriff Dave, even Agent Felton. Everyone who had stood by us. Adam grilled ribs. The kids played tag around the barn. Dad sat on his porch chair, wrapped in a blanket, telling stories like he was 20 again, and the banner hanging above us read, "Carter Ranch, a legacy they couldn't steal," as the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange and purple. I took a long breath and finally let the tension in my shoulders drop. We had been through fire threats, sabotage lies, but we stood and we won, not just for me, but for everyone who's ever had to fight for what's already theirs. So if you ever find yourself backed into a corner by people who think rules and power make them untouchable, remember this. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous because we don't break, we rebuild. Let me know where you watched from, and if you've ever stood your ground against a Karen, do drop your story below. You're not alone. This was Carter Ranch, and it's ours forever.